Destiny 2 is a game by Bungie. You know those guys. They made that hit game, Doom, for the Mac. Destiny 2 is a game that I have rather mixed feelings about. Part of me wants to really love the game, mostly because of its art design and RPG type elements. The grinding for gear while leveling up and customizing your character while doing stupid shit with friends, in my opinion, is really fun. So let me discuss my feelings about this game, or lack of game. Alright, so I had this whole segment written up about the story, and a ton of junk about what I liked, disliked, and was confused about. But I decided to get rid of it, mostly because the story is really inoffensive. It was better than the first, but at the same time, I personally don't care. Whoops. The game can look pretty damn gorgeous at points, but at the same time, it can look not so good. Like most other games, the graphics are passable. They're not the best you'd ever see, but at the same time, they're certainly not the worst. A lot of how good the game looks comes from its pretty decent art direction, which comes from being not Halo. Most, if not all, of the ship designs are ugly as sin. The enemy designs haven't changed much from the first, but hey, at least they got some new animations and some new bullet colors. Oh boy. The classes themselves are pretty decent looking, but the armor designs are so boring and there are so many reskins that makes you wonder why they didn't just bring back a bunch of Destiny 1 stuff. A lot of the issues with how the game looks now comes from problems that are fixed in the PC version. But I'm not a PC mouth breather who cares about graphical upgrades and whatnot. But the frame rate being uncapped and better FOV is a huge game changer, even if the gun still remains fuck huge on the PC version. So like I spoke of before, why is the gun so fuck huge? Why am I missing like a third of my screen? Who thought this was a good idea? So outside of that, the gameplay itself is pretty straightforward. As like most first-person shooters, you aim a gun at a thing, you pull the trigger, and you kill it. Not a very difficult concept. Once you kill things though, you get some loot to equip, and you get stronger, and then you repeat, till you become legend. So the way weapons and armor work in this game is different from the first, but at the same time very similar. The first you had a few random rolls that you could pull for different guns, then you'd have to level said weapon, collect some garbage collectible items to spend on the gun so you could snag the perk. With the randomization, you ended up having to farm the weapon to get a specific type of roll you'd like to have, be it exploding bullets or better aiming. There was a point in time, a very dark point in Destiny 1 history, where people would spend a ton of time in Glimmer for the perfect shotgun. In this new Destiny, the randomization has been removed. From what I can assume was for PvP, to better balance it. The armor doesn't have any interesting perks outside of exotics, but that's where the mods come in. Mods in this game are like little perks you can equip on weapons and armors to do different things. Like faster reload, faster grenade recharge, faster ability recharge, so on and so forth. So there's not really a point in farming for armor for anything outside of dressing up, which on its own is fine, I guess. Before you would have the same people running the same armor for the perks. Now at least you can look like a unique idiot while playing this game. So while on that subject, now I feel it's the time I should talk about the PvP. I feel as this is where a lot of the balance for the game went. 4-man teams for a lot more streamlined gameplay as a whole, more generic weapons because the randomization would be harder to balance, the slower recharge on grenades and supers, the removal of fun melee abilities on like the Titan so you could just give them all the tackle, for every subclass, even though it doesn't do much damage anymore. The shotguns and snipers were moved from the secondary slot to the power weapon slot to make it less abusive, because in the previous game we had the blink shotgunners around every corner. At the same time, back then assault rifles were nerfed into oblivion, and since this game is still somewhat new, at least everything sees a little bit more usage. But the funny thing about Destiny 2's balance for the PvP is, it's not all that balanced. There's a weapon in that game from the first game, which is currently dominating it. It has the highest usage in Trials and is super easy to get. Does that make it unbalanced though, if everybody has it? But I just see the same 5 weapons over and over again. What was the point of casualizing it all? So with all that said, I can talk about the endgame. There is none. The raid gear drops up to level 300, which is currently the highest light level. When you put in the legendary mods, it becomes 305. But at the same time, doing your milestones every week can give you 300s. The endgame content currently exists of your weekly milestones, your nightfalls, which also don't drop such great items, you just get your engram. I mean, the nightfall can sometimes be fun, like when I was writing this. The nightfall was the one where your abilities recharged really fast, and it was really fun just throwing grenades out everywhere. But not many of the modifiers so far have been used, and they haven't really been fun. Prism's been used twice, and that's like the most boring one. So the 2 last endgame things, the first one being Trials, which is just PvP, and the second one being the raid, which requires 6 players who can at least talk and or listen to each other. Rest in peace, deaf mutes. The raid currently doesn't have a hard mode out, but I doubt it would be dramatically different from the normal mode, as it's pretty uninteresting already. All the gear that drops from the raid is somewhat better than regular gear, I guess, but you can get away with using that regular gear anyway. There's no interesting raid weapons that give little neat perks that would help you with the hard mode, like destroying the lights faster or dealing more damage to the Vex. Don't get me wrong though, even though I dislike a lot of what Destiny 2 has, it can still be super satisfying. I had a blast running through the raid for the first time with friends. The gunplay is still super solid, even though the gun still takes up way too much of the screen. It's a solid game, but in the back of your head, you just have this nagging feeling. It could have been so much more. So before I ended this, I just wanted to toss a few more things in. Strikes, which was one of the PvE things you would spam to level your character and grind gear, that's back. But there's less reason to do it this time, because this time they introduced heroic events, which are faster than strikes, and also give the same rewards. The removal of some game modes like SRL and even custom matches is really stupid. Not sure what they were thinking with that. The sensitivity for your controller on console is still fucking awful. The game moves really slow because of it, paired with the terrible FOV and 30 frames, which can dip in single digits during the raid, can be really sickening. On a more subjective note, I found the music to be a little worse than the first game. My mixed thoughts on Destiny 2 are kinda strange. I both like and dislike Destiny 2. I love the concept, the idea, the Borderlands without being Borderlands. Then at the same time I hate almost everything else. Maybe it's some form of Stockholm Syndrome, which has me playing repeatedly. But even if that were true, I'm still playing, still trying to have fun. I don't know. I just wanted to put my stupid thoughts somewhere. Somewhere nobody would watch. Also, I played Iron Banner a bit while writing this thing. It's not any different from regular PvP. Item levels don't mean anything anymore. It's the same shit as regular PvP. It's really mediocre.
The main story is better, but the more the more that I think about it, the more the other stuff is making me more and more angry. On like darkness was, so it's not in the game until the end, maybe, kind of. Rasputin doesn't say or like do anything, but maybe kind of does. And there's no lore. They took out all the Grimoire cards, but they put the lore back in. The lore they put in was stuff like universe. This beam of light might have a purpose, but not this one. That's some good lore. I like that lore. Thank you.
Look how Kumon is whipped. Ooh.